Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you the battle group overview for the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. And in this one we're going to be talking through all of the units, but let's just start by talking about how I feel this deck should be played. Now in general I find the Canadians to be actually quite a strong Phase A deck. They have the Rams, they have the Snipers, they also have plenty of 6-pounders and also the Wasps, which are very interesting units, which we'll get into later on. Their Phase B is weak and then they move into a stronger Phase C. So it's a very interesting deck that's very backwards and very back and forth throughout the game. But let's start off by talking through the Recon. So in my Recon tab, it's very infantry focused. I don't rely on the Humber Mark IVs or the Staghounds at all. I'm starting off with one card of the Scouts, which are brought in by the Universal Carrier, which does have a 4HE gun on it, which allows you to use that to support your infantry squads. These guys, 4 strength, very good stealth, very good optics, or very high optics. Really nice sort of solid 4-man strength recon squad to basically assist you in situations where they might come under attack. And they don't die as easily as other 2-man squads. Recce are, for exactly the reason I was just saying, aren't necessarily as good as Scouts because they die so easily with just being 2-man squads. But this little Lynx vehicle can be quite nice, very fast vehicle, quite a little versatile thing to help you with your fire support here and there. And for 35 points, yeah, not too bad. I think I would just prefer the extra 5 points for the extra strength on the Recon squad, which is what I go for. And I have all of the Sniper Scouts available. So these guys are 40 points. They're pretty expensive Recon squads, honestly. For a 2-man squad, 40 points is quite a lot. However, they do have a Sniper, which has 10 rate of fire. The best thing about a Sniper, though, is that they have quite high suppression. So they can stun enemy squads very quickly, especially the ones that have great accuracy, like these Sniper Scouts here, where you get 1 per card. They have 2 experience already, 2-star experience, which makes 3-star next to a command unit, and they can very quickly stun enemy squads. They also basically hit and kill every shot that they land, so the squads do disintegrate relatively quickly if their fire rate is on point. Moving into Phase B, you can get cards of more Recce in both the MMG carrier, which is a really nice brain carrier, honestly, with the 8HE power on the Vickers machine gun, or you can get the Recce in the Stuart Recce, which comes with a 50 cal and a 30 cal. And yeah, again, both really nice options. However, moving into Phase B, I don't find the value in bringing in anything other than more snipers. So I have all of the snipers available from Phase A. These Staghounds are completely redundant by Phase C, which is why I wouldn't choose to bring them in. I personally think the Staghounds need a price buff, so get that price to bring in like lowered. And I think these guys would be chosen more often, but for now, even with their 2-star experience, Staghounds aren't that great. So let's move on to infantry. Under the infantry tab, it's very much about having enough availability to support your initial push with the Canadians. The Canadians really rely on a pretty strong start to get them going, and they do have some pretty nice infantry to allow them to do that. So I've got 2 cards of these 6-man rifles, which is great. The 6 packs of rifle squads with the 1-star experience, making that 2-star experience with a command unit nearby. Pretty strong rifle squads, honestly. Probably better than most decks, really, which use rifles. So these guys can really hold their own compared to other decks. But then we have the brilliant Stormtroopers. And these guys are 2-star infantry squads which rely on MP40s and Sten guns with 9HE on both of those. At close range they field a total of 18 HE power at 100 meter range, plus the 22 HE power satchel charge, and this satchel charge deletes enemy squads. And if that doesn't finish the job, well, their submachine gun certainly will. Furthermore, they do have their own smoke grenades, so that allows them to get closer to enemy units before they have to engage, which is perfect because that's exactly what they need to be doing. So what I find generally with this deck is I use the rifles if I'm going to be engaging at the 300 meter range. Whereas if I'm going to get up close and personal, maybe in a town or in a forest, then the stormtroopers are certainly where you want to go, because these guys will do the job. And when they have command unit nearby, 3-star stormtroopers with 18 HE power, very potent unit. Then aside from that, you can get Vickers HMGs. Unfortunately, what lets the Vickers down is that they only have the 500 meter range compared to the 800 meter range of the MG42s that you can get from the Germans. However, still a very useful unit to have about, and 6 HE power with 2 stars with command unit. Nothing to ignore, that's for sure. I suggest maybe taking at least one card of these, just because I think they're worth having on the deck. Then in Phase A you do need your command infantry, so the rifle leader takes care of that, and they also bring you along the Piat in case any armoured units give you some trouble. Furthermore, the command carrier there, this is a 2-star rifle leader squad, which gives you a 2-star command carrier, and at 3-star with the rifle leader nearby, they can definitely do a lot of damage to enemy infantry squads. In Phase 8 you can also get rifle squads in the Kangaroo, and the Kangaroo is a Canadian Infantry unique unit, which is a priest mounted with a 50 cal and no gun, basically a armoured personnel carrier with a 50 cal mounted, and it's quite well armoured, but very expensive for Phase A, so I don't feel it's necessary. Moving into Phase B, I have one card of the rifles with 1-star veterancy again, and then I have one card of the rifles in the Kangaroos, because moving into Phase B and C, I think the Kangaroos can still find their use and are relatively useful in certain situations because they do have the 50 cal with the 800 meter range. Now the other options that you can choose in Phase B include the Assault Pioneers, which come in the white truck. Assault Pioneers would be really nice in this deck if I wasn't already relying on the Stormtroopers. And I wouldn't necessarily bring in all of my Stormtroopers at the start of the game because I feel like they are really good in specific situations. If you're pushing through a forest or through a town, they are great for that purpose. Use the smoke grenades to jump them across streets and so on, and you will be laughing. But Assault Pioneers, you know, they sort of do the same thing. And I find just in general they're not as effective, and in Phase B I should probably still have some Stormtroopers left if I'm playing it properly. Now if I had more slots available, I would definitely bring in another rifle leader in Phase B with the Command Steward, because 3-star Command Stewards are absolutely awesome when next to the command units, and that's always been the case with all of the allied decks, honestly. Moving into Phase C, where you get availability onto some more Assault Pioneers and Assault Pioneers in the Ram Kangaroo. Now this must be the most armoured APC that I know of. It's just the Ram hull with a 50 cal and a 30 cal mounted, so 8 front armour, pretty crazy. But to me, just definitely not worth waiting for Phase C to bring in this much infantry, and also at such a high cost. 75 points a pop really, which is pretty crazy for infantry. So be really careful when you're trying to pick out these units. I would really like, honestly, to be able to get the Ram Kangaroo with other units, because I probably would if there was some available in Phase B. But in general, I've set up my infantry so that they provide me with enough availability to sustain me throughout the game. And then the idea is that I'll be using my support units and tanks to help me make ground. So let's move over to the tank tab. In the tank tab, it's a pretty small one. You only get 4 slots. But there is quite a obvious, I want to say, choice that you go for in this deck. And it's mainly that you rely on the rams in Phase A. So you want both your rams in this deck, because not only are they command units, they are 1-star veterancy, and they are probably one of the best tanks that are available in Phase A. There's not really much that can come up against a ram, and most German AT guns only have 10 armor, or 10 AP, sorry. So they're going to be struggling to penetrate rams from max range. And this is where you can really exploit these guys. Rams are perfect for just really wrecking enemy tanks early on. You got to be careful because their main gun doesn't have HE value, which means they can't engage those pesky AT guns from range. However, what you can do is use these to reveal AT guns and then use mortars or something else to take them out. Moving into Phase B, there is Sherman 3s available, and I've been tempted in the past to swap out my card of Fireflies for Sherman 3s in Phase B, because the 230 cals and 150 cal with a main gun with 5 HE is really useful infantry fire support. However, I find the Fireflies invaluable for helping to deal with German armour. So moving into Phase C, instead of taking any of the Sherman 3s at all in Phase B or C, I rely solely on the Fireflies. You can bring in one Firefly with the extra experience, which I think is a necessity in this deck. Just getting the 2-star veterancy on a Firefly is good enough to make the 6 accuracy gun accurate and the 16 AP power do something. These Fireflies, the 2 Fireflies without the veterancy, I'm not so convinced just yet, and have been tempted to try out Sherman 3s in Phase B like I mentioned previously. Fireflies are okay, but you just got to remember that they will still get popped pretty easily by anything with high AP, which in this case is quite a lot because, you know, they've only got 11 armor. Even the Pack 40 I think gets 13 AP, so that can destroy these at 1200 meter range. Be careful with the Fireflies, they can be extremely fragile. Let's move on to support. The support tab in this deck is actually quite an interesting one. You get a unit that is called the Wasp, and these things are brain carriers with fuel tanks and a flame nozzle. So for 260 meter range you can flood a place with flames. And these guys are the perfect candidates for that. 40 points can definitely do the job. I don't think you necessarily need more command in Phase A, so I don't bring in any dingoes, and these flamethrowers are only 2-man squads, which I generally find isn't good enough. So I don't need flamethrowers, I don't use dingoes in Phase A at least. I'm bringing in one card of Wasps because I find they are fantastic again for supporting into towns and for especially hedgerows as well. You can use these to clear out hedgerows just by like using fire position or something. And then I've got one card of the Bedford supplies in Phase A, which generally is enough to resupply my deck for the entire game. And then I have dingoes in Phase B, basically to make up for the lack of command moving into the Phase B and C. I also have one card of the Priest Double Ds. These guys with the 15 HE power 1200 meter range gun is really useful for dealing with enemy emplacements and infantry at range. Also these guys can take out light vehicles as well, which can be useful. And they have 2 machine gunners, both with 50 cals, and that helps greatly too. That's pretty much my support tab. There's not too much to talk about. These Wasps are just really nice, unique units that you can really take advantage of in those short range areas. Just make sure that they don't get pinned down by machine gun fire, because machine gun fire can actually get through these Wasps sometimes because they do only have one front, one side and one rear armor. There you go. Let's move on to anti-tank. The anti-tank tab in the Canadian Infantry is quite a strange one, because in Phase A you get plenty of 6-pounders, which is fantastic. You can spread them about, do whatever you want. You can get a card of Piats, but I find Piat is the worst AT system in the entire game. So yeah, I rely solely on 6-pounders in Phase A. And this kind of carries through to Phase B, where the only AT that's worth anything is the Wolverines. And even these Wolverines in Phase B don't really match up to a lot of Phase B German armour. So you do have to be careful with these Wolverines. They can easily be countered by Stugs, they can easily be countered by Jagdpanzers, and also Panthers in general. So just be careful. 13 AP power may not be enough to penetrate most German armour, and the Germans can definitely take advantage of that if you're not too careful. Moving into Phase C, however, you do start to get access to the 17-pounders as well as some Achilles, which are the Wolverines with the extra 17-pounder gun mounted upon them, which gives them the 16 AP power. These guys are the 1-star variants that you can get your hands on, and I would definitely recommend it, because 6 accuracy with the 2-star veterancy with the command unit nearby, maybe just a dingo or something, is definitely going to allow you to snipe with these from maximum range. They're not going to be as good as German armour, but maybe just enough, and sometimes that's all you need. If you need to ambush, then use the 17-pounders. In Phase B, you literally just got to carry over and continue to use your AT guns from Phase A, so be well aware of that. Let's move on to anti-air. So the anti-air in this deck is actually pretty nice. They get access to Tripolstons in Phase A, which can be used to support your ground forces assaulting positions, which is really nice, as well as just being fantastic for stunning and taking out aircraft in the sky. Furthermore, you can get these trucks, the CMP Tripolstons, with 2-star veterancy, and these guys are even more effective at shooting down aircraft. And these guys actually do shoot down aircraft just because they have increased rate of fire, they have increased accuracy because of their veterancy. And if you take both of these out at the same time, the 2 CMP Tripolstons, put them next to a dingo so they both have 3 stars. A plane flies over these guys, it's not going to survive for very long. Moving into Phase C, I do take a card of the Crusader AA Mark IIs because these have an 810 round per minute rate of fire with 11 HE, and they're an armoured vehicle. So really nice, strong and versatile unit to continue into Phase C. Now these can even be used on their own to assault infantry positions. However, don't let them get hit by enemy armour because their armour is so low, and they are actually worth quite a lot of points. So be careful with these guys, they can be quite fragile. Let's move on to artillery. So the artillery in this deck is not the best, but I think you still need to rely on these mortars in Phase A. Just because they provide you with cheap smoke support and cheap stunning support for enemy infantry and so on. So just in general, I think mortars are pretty important for that smoke purpose. I might choose a 25-pounder for that, but I'm just not so sure. Moving into Phase B, this is where I take the 25-pounders for 120 points each. I don't find I have enough points to bring in any 25-pounders in Phase A, and I never have. Even after testing them, I just find that I don't have the extra points. So I've left them till Phase B, and it seems to work out better. Also allows me to accompany them with 2 sextons with 2-star accuracy. And this allows them to fire very quickly and very accurately, so they will hit their targets. And these sextons can be really, really nice addition to your arsenal moving into Phase B. Especially if you're struggling with like enemy machine gun positions or enemy AT positions, these sextons can really do the job. If we talk about the other selections, mortars moving into Phase B in my opinion is useless. The Ram 2 OP with the 140mm off map, this off map just isn't really powerful enough to make a difference, and the Ram 2 doesn't have its main gun enabled, which is really quite disappointing. Otherwise it might be a unit worth taking because the Ram is so strong. In Phase B you can also gain access to cards of 2 sextons, but since I much prefer the extra veterancy and I don't tend to spam them out too much, that seems fine to me. Then we have the AOP carriers, and these guys are definitely something worth considering. If I had more space in my deck, they would definitely fill that up. Let's move on to air. So under the air tab in Phase A, I think it's very important that you do have at least one Spitfire at your disposal, because if you let the Germans freely airstrike you throughout the game, you're going to be in for a hard time. So this Spitfire pretty much, not so much guarantees, but definitely deters HS-129s and other bombers moving into Phase A. So that's what this Spitfire is here for. And sometimes I would maybe suggest even going for 2 Spitfires in Phase A, just in case you need to in certain situations. The Spitfire bombers, in my opinion, are just way too slow. 500 km/h speed. Doesn't matter how much HE value you give these bombs, these guys are going to go down very quickly every time because their resilience is so bad. Moving into Phase B, I bring up more Spitfire Mark 9s. I find just if you've only got one Spitfire Mark 9 in the deck, it doesn't tend to be enough, so I'm bringing more availability in Phase B as opposed to another 1-star Spitfire in Phase A. These guys only have 550 km/h speed, which can let them down, but generally is absolutely fine. I don't bring the Typhoon bomber in Phase A, even though it does have 2 15 HE power bombs, mainly for the same reason. It's got 550 km/h speed, it has bad agility compared to the very good agility of a Spitfire Mark 9. Now in Phase B you can also grab 2 packs of mosquitoes, and I would recommend bringing in the majority of the mosquitoes you can see available. And this is mainly due to the fact that not only do they have 6 10 HE power bombs, which aren't my favourite, I generally don't like 10 HE power bombs, but they also have 8 guns on them, which includes 4 20mm cannons and 3 or 4 Browning 303 Mark IIs, which are actually quite decent. So we got a total of 10 HE power. They get a lot of guns on target, they stun very quickly, and in a front head-on, these mosquitoes can almost one-pass stun an enemy unit. Furthermore, if you get a mosquito onto the tail of an opponent, then you're in for a laugh because you're literally going to shoot it down every time. So with these mosquitoes, make sure you have evac Winchester turned off in the options so that you can use them as fighters or interceptors after they've dropped their payload. However, don't keep them around if you don't control the skies already, since these won't match up to BF-109s. Moving into Phase C, you have more Typhoons available. These guys have the extra bombs. This guy with the 20 HE power bombs there. Actually these are rockets, sorry. Completely missed that. Yeah, these are the 150mm rockets, and they're great for sniping AT positions and so on, maybe sniping even like leader units or enemy infantry, but I just don't find that they have a place over the mosquitoes in this deck. As for the Phase C mosquitoes, well, these guys have 4 15 HE power bombs, which makes them a little more powerful than the mosquitoes available in Phase B. And then they still have the capability of good resilience and the agility in the air. So they can still provide the interceptor role. They have pretty much the same agility and resilience and speed as the mosquitoes that use lighter bombs. And that's about it. I do rely on a lot on those mosquitoes, and I really have enjoyed using them. So let's have a good talk about how I would use this deck in Phase A and moving into Phase B and C and so on, and talk about how units complement each other. So in Phase A, it depends really what kind of map you're playing on. But if you're playing with forests or towns, I would recommend using stormtroopers, because with the command unit nearby, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. If you're fighting off a bit more of an open area, use your rifles to lock down your front line. You can also bring in the Vickers HMGs to support both times, so stormtroopers, Vickers HMG rifle leader, or rifles, Vickers rifle leader. I would say that's like your infantry start. Then you bring in your sniper scouts where you need them. Sniper scouts can actually assist your front lines in pinning down enemy units very quickly. So say if you're engaged with a rifle battle, you've got some rifles taking on some Panzer Grenadiers, get some sniper scouts in there and they will turn the tide of that battle every time. Really, really nice. Then you want to be bringing in at least one of your rams in phase A, if not both, because those rams pretty much outmatch most German armor in phase A. So if you're coming up against a lot of German armor, bring in your second ram. Otherwise I would just, stick with your first one, because it is still, worth having in phase A, even just to deter enemy armor in that phase. You can also grab your wasps. Wasps are very good for those like town fightings where 260 meter range is actually quite, just enough to make a difference. So use those wasps where you can. They're only 40 points, quite a lot of availability. So yeah, make good use of them, and make sure you have enough 6-pounders as well from the start. So maybe not start the game with a ram, maybe start the game with some 6-pounders, wasps, stormtroopers, Vickers, rifle leader, maybe a couple sniper scouts. That's pretty much your lot. Then on your first tick, second tick and so on, you want to be taking maybe another ram, maybe more infantry. It basically depends on your situation. I find that the Canadian infantry, because they're so rounded, they can respond to all sorts of situations quite well. And that's something that you really need to take home, if anything, from this video, because a lot of people assume that, oh, it's an infantry deck, they're going to specialize, and they kind of do with the stormtroopers and the snipers, but that doesn't make their playstyle very specific. It's quite generic, and overall, they can field quite decent tanks for allied sort of standards. So it's something you've got to be wary of, and also you're pretty low on reinforcement points in phase A. So it's not going to play out like a standard infantry deck that generally can take advantage of the early phases. You've got to be a bit careful with that. And anti-air, the tripolstons, you can bring them in phase A only if you need them, and only if you're like in a sure strategy that you might use it against ground forces. Because if you get tripolston on target and you're sitting it just outside of a town, it can go to work on that town. 2-inch mortar carrier, completely up to you guys. If you think you need the smoke in certain situations, like especially Colville, then a 2-inch carrier is worth having. And then if you need your Spitfires, of course, you're being harassed by HS-129 or whatever's trying to get rid of your rams, Spitfire might be the key. So be aware of that. And into phase B, you can start relying on your Spitfires, your Mosquitoes and so on. Phase B though is pretty weak with the Canadian infantry. Not too much you're going to be bringing in, just holding the line with your rifles, bringing in the command units to where you need them, maybe bolstering your AA, or just hammering them with more artillery. That's pretty much how your phase B goes. And then into phase C, you can actually start doing things again, because you get access to the 17-pounder, the Crusader AA, you get the Fireflies, the Achilles, and finally have some substance. However, at this point, Germany's probably caught up as well, so be careful. And that's pretty much about it. That's my look at the Canadian infantry. Generally quite an all-round deck in my opinion. They have quite nice veterancy on their infantry. It's nothing super special, but it's definitely enough. Like the 3-star stormtroopers with a command unit nearby really do so much damage, and I think if played properly, the Canadian can really win the infantry war, but they don't have like enough card slots available to be able to pick all of their options, which I would like in this deck, but I think they work in quite a weird way to how you would expect. Anyway, let me know what you think, guys, of my deck. Let me know your changes and your thoughts in the comments, of course. I always enjoy reading them, and I look forward to seeing some there. But in the meantime, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.